Hey marketing friends, it's Andrew Walton with Neil Patel, and in this video we're going to talk about how to improve conversion on rapidentry.com.au. Now, with any CRO effort, before we talk about design and before we talk about copy, we really have to think about strategy, the source of traffic, who the prospective customer is, and those elements. And even in a search instance where, say, they're searching for something like Zero Bookkeeper or bookkeeping or bookkeeping in Brisbane or something like this, the first thing that you have to show on your landing page, on the page that they come to, is that they are in the right place. And this headline does not make that clear. Business services is too general that even if they've searched one of these specific terms and have clicked on your link in the results page, this does not make it perfectly clear that they have made the right decision. Now, it may look like, yes, you have the text here, yes, you have the text here, you're explaining what you're doing, but this is not something that people process logically. It's something that automatically happens within about a second of being on the page, and you don't have time to convince them that they are in the right place. It has to be the immediate impression when they land on the page. So Rapid Entry Business Services does not immediately give that signal. When writing this headline, I would probably prefer to talk, you could mention the service. I would also include some sort of benefit of that service or who that service is for. So it might be something like small business bookkeeping as part of your headline, not the whole headline, of course. You need to have more than that, but small business bookkeeping is more specific than business services, and then you can expand on that if you want. So to talk about some of the design elements that affect this, this background does not really support the offer that you're making. This is not clearly related to business services or bookkeeping, and it's not even tangentially related. For example, Neil Patel's site QuickSprout, if he had some sort of image involving plant growth of some sort, you could see that as being related from a branding perspective. But in this case, that's not the case. If the name of your business is Rapid Entry, this image does not really correlate with this title. So immediately upon landing on the page, there's going to be a bit of a disconnect between what the person sees and what your actual offer is, both in terms of the copy here and in terms of the design here. Now, regardless of the image you end up choosing, you really want to make sure that this headline is very easy to read. For example, right now when I've highlighted it, it's much easier to read than right now with the white on a green, brown, and white background. So this is actually fairly important. Your headline needs to stand out a whole heck of a lot. Some other elements I would comment on above the fold here, the logo is not really visible. This is not an effective logo at this point, very pixelated. The navigation bar here, this looks like this is cool that you have a benefit in here, but this is not really the ideal place to put this. Mostly when people are looking at a nav bar, there's a specific context for this, right? So blog, that makes sense. Brisbane, I'd say bookkeeping probably services, that makes sense. Zero Bookkeeper Brisbane, or Her Work Will Make You Money, that just doesn't, again, it's a bit of a disconnect. It's not what people expect in the nav bar, and it's not the best treatment of this. So I don't know what exactly the difference between these two things are. It looks like you could probably combine these two elements into one single item on your nav bar. And the search bar, in e-commerce settings, this is something that you have to have, the ability to search, do site search, because it provides a disproportionately large percentage of revenue on e-commerce sites. On informational and content sites, unless you have a large library of content, this has the opposite effect. Generally, people cannot find what they're looking for, and that will tend to result in them leaving. So unless you have a huge library of content behind here, I would not enable site search. Now, if we're talking about copy here, this looks like it was written for search engine robots. It does not look like it was written for a human being. This looks like you're just stuffing keywords into like small business in Brisbane, Xero bookkeeper, bookkeeping, cloud-based accounting system. It looks like it's just a sentence filled with 4 or 5 different keywords, and it's not written with the user in mind. And that's not to say that 100% of the time that won't work, but in this case, it doesn't work. You can communicate these ideas much more succinctly, and what you need to do in the copy is really show that you understand the target audience's reality, because that's what's going to make them trust you and be inclined to work with you. So that means addressing the problems and frustrations that they have and doing it at a deep level. So say, for example, maybe not exactly related to bookkeeping, but say in the marketing niche or in my niche, a business owner, everyone wants more customers and they want more revenue. And in terms of bookkeeping, they may want to save time or save money. And that's sort of the most surface level problem and benefit. But you can go a level deeper than that. And this is some pretty advanced stuff. I would check out the AMP modules about your core story and understanding the audience to really go deep into this, and definitely check out Amaya's material on reality bubbles. That would be the main thing I would recommend. But to give a quick overview of that, the problems that they're experiencing, whether that's not enough time or not understanding bookkeeping or wanting more sales or whatever it happens to be, depending on the context, that's affecting their real life in some way. So I don't know your audience enough to say, so I'll give an example from my own audience. My audience wants more sales. Generally, that's the thing they want. The reason for that may be one of several things. They're not getting enough leads, or they're not converting their leads to sales, or they're not getting enough traffic. Usually it falls into one of those 3 categories. However, the real reality that the person is experiencing day to day as a small business owner tends to be more something along the lines of they don't have specific hours, so they tend to work long into the evenings and long into their weekends. They miss out on a lot of things that they used to be able to do. They don't get to go out with their spouse or partner as often. They may miss events that their kids are taking part in. There are lots of very personal challenges that arise as a result of this other problem. And getting down onto that personal level is really, really powerful. So even if you don't know your audience that well, I would dig deep and at the very least imagine what that might look like, because if you're close, that's going to make a much stronger connection than just saying something like saving time and saving money and those sorts of things as it relates to bookkeeping. That is to say, this will differentiate you from every other bookkeeper who is saying, well, I'll save you time, I'll save you money, I'll help you prevent from getting into any legal trouble or anything like this, because every single person that is your competitor can and probably is saying that. So going to this deeper level will let you show that you understand them better than every other person who's marketing to them. So just as an example here, talking about sick of being worried where you stand, that's very general. It doesn't really mean anything specific to me or probably to your prospect. If your tax accountant won't accept your box of receipts, is that a real problem that business owners are dealing with? I think that there's another level of depth and detail that you're going to be able to find here. And you have to imagine, what does the prospect have to believe and think before they're going to contact you? What has to be in their mind, and what do you have to show them? So first, you have to show that you understand the reality. We talked about that already. Second, you have to show that you are the right person to help them solve their problem. So say in this top section here, you briefly describe that you understand their situation. Then the next section I would put, you could put that, say, scroll down below the fold. That's where I would talk about how you solve the problem. And after that, then it makes sense to say, if you want me to help you solve this problem, well, here's how you can get in touch. Now, for the rest of this, let's see. I'm going to talk about this more from the design perspective, I think, because a couple things here. One is that centered text should be reserved to your headlines. Everything else should be right aligned. It improves readability. Centered text actually causes fatigue in your readers, and they will, as they scroll down and have to read more and more centered text, they will be less and less inclined to read your copy. So I would, unless you have a section headline here, I would right align all this and make it all the same size, because that also increases the professionalism, how valuable even your page looks. So there are definitely too many different fonts, font sizes, and alignments here. Let's see. So in a section where you're talking about yourself, you want to talk a little bit about not just that so this is a good start, this is who you are. Then you have to talk about what you do, and this is the place for you to build trust and rapport with the audience. So you can talk about a little bit maybe about your origin story, a little bit about what problems you like to solve for your clients. If you stand against something, then definitely talk about what you stand against. That's a really great way to show how you're different from everybody else. So if there's a certain accounting practice or something that happens often with bookkeeping services in this particular, in Australia or in general that you are aware of, you can address those sorts of things. And this could be a short section. You can use basically the same amount of space, 5 or 6 lines, but some of this story is what will build enough trust to get them to say, okay, this is a real person, I can trust her, I'm maybe interested in reaching out. So an example of that, I know of an insurance agent who has a pretty compelling story. Basically, his father died because he wasn't able to afford medical insurance, he had some sort of accident, and he wasn't able to pay for proper medical care. So his son, the insurance agent, vowed at that time to get as many people as possible health insurance. And he started going door to door. He would tell this story to prospective clients, and that was really compelling. And that reason, more than just I want to save you money or I want to save you time, there's an additional sort of bigger purpose behind what you're doing. Telling some story like that is also a really compelling way to make people trust you and believe you at a much deeper level than all these surface level benefits that everyone will be talking about. Every single one of your competitors, every single bookkeeper who will say basically the same things about saving time and money and avoiding litigation or legal problems and whatever else the industry tends to say. So this, I would say, if you're going to make a bunch of different points, put bullet points here. Otherwise, it looks like a paragraph and it's a little bit disjointed. Again, if you're talking about problems, like if your bookkeeping isn't of a certain standard, it's not going to be correct, I would address the problems up top, really. And I would follow one specific line of thought. Probably choose the biggest problem, the thing that the largest percentage of your audience is dealing with. You can work some of the other problems in, but there's going to be one thing that's more compelling than everything else to the vast majority of your audience. So for example, if you want to use this as one of your main points, if your bookkeeping isn't of this particular standard, it's not going to be correct, then what's the consequence of that? I'd go deeper into that, tell the story, and then you might say something like, oh, and more than that, if your payroll doesn't balance, and then you go into some other problems, but do it within the context of whatever the biggest problem is and how these other secondary problems relate to the biggest problem. But when you're talking about problems, you can't just say it's not going to be correct. You really have to paint the picture of what the consequences of it not being correct are going to be. And if you have any statistics to validate your claims, that is incredibly powerful. So if you know that, say, 10% of businesses don't do their bookkeeping correctly and that costs them an average of X dollars, then using that information is going to make the problem much more compelling. So actually back up here, we're initially talking to people. The way I like to structure problems is that you introduce what the problem is, then I like to use third-party data to show the person why the problem is urgent, why they should take action right now, and why the problem is bigger than they imagined it was. Those are really important points that make your copy really compelling. Let's see, I'm not sure if this is my browser not loading correctly or if it's a problem with the site. I would look into this. And let's see, a Q&A of some sort. So a sort of who is this for? All of your sections, I would say, actually need a headline. Right now the text is just separated by space. All of these different sections, this section needs a headline about me, or you can choose a different headline, of course. Why work with me? Something like that. This section, again, I would move up top, but if you're going to keep this here, it needs a headline, and this section needs another headline, frequently asked questions. Probably makes sense here. And this I might rework a little bit to be sections about who do we work with. So the fact that businesses with over $150,000 in income, and maybe another section about your services, like why work with us, who should work with us, and why work with us. Because here you have these two different sections sort of combined. You're talking about retainer clients have basically unlimited access to you. That is a different sort of point than the firm should be earning over $150,000. So I'd actually split these out. I would put them top and bottom actually. You could potentially put them side by side. I would put one section in the other section. Who do we work with? And then maybe our advantages, why work with us? Now, from a design perspective, gray on gray is not the ideal color choice. And this margin, there should also be a margin here between the edge of this box and where the text starts. And same with on this side. It will look more professional that way. But I would look at having on this page a background color here that's white, and then if you want a margin, then you could use, I still wouldn't use gray, I would use, say, a tan or some sort of brown tone, very light, or it could be another color tone that's in line with whatever your logo is in the background image you choose, if you choose a new background image. But black text on gray just does not scream high quality, professional, etc. So I would look at changing this color here. And really, white is probably, or just very off-white is probably the ideal choice. And if you want an accent color, put it in the margin. Just a very simple solution there. And then if you actually have text in this section, you could make this section an offsetting color, a deeper shade of the accent color you have in the margin, for example, and then make this text white if you wanted to have something that breaks up the design. So something like a green with white text might look really nice here. Of course, assuming that you make this white and you make the margin some other light color. And let's see. just in general, it's much easier to get someone to sign up for something than get them to grab your email address, pop it in their email client and send you an email. It's much more effective to have a form that they can fill out. Say, enter your email address for whatever your offer is, and then they can click the button to enter that. Or you just have a button, and when you click that button, the form pops up and they can fill it out, and then you contact them. That will probably result in more inquiries because they have to do less work. Basically, you want to minimize friction as much as possible. And with this current setup, you're asking the person landing on your site to do all the work. And that is very difficult when it's the first time you've met someone. I would say look at your competitor websites, look even outside your own area, look at some maybe big American bookkeeping firms and see how they are approaching this particular item. But most of the time, when you capture the lead, on the whole, especially over a longer period of time, you get to nurture that lead. Even if they don't become a sale immediately, you have the chance to sell them over the coming months and even years, whereas you're going to get almost certainly much fewer people grabbing the email address and writing you specifically an email. And so when I was saying that they have to do all the work, thinking about this from their perspective, they have to figure out what to say to you also. So even if they're interested, they grab your email address, they pop it in their email client. Now they have to think, okay, what do I even say to, what do they even say to you? Whereas if you have just the opt-in box, it's very, very easy. It's low friction, and you get to start the conversation and control the conversation. And it'll be much easier. You will probably have a much higher conversion. So that's probably the main thing, that sort of call to action. So I think that does it for this page. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat below this video, and I'd be happy to respond to them. And good luck growing your business. Great first effort. Keep it up.